My son had one rule for me his entire adult life. Mom, never go to Willow Ridge Farm. Promise me. 3 weeks after I buried him, a lawyer handed me a rusted key and said, "Mrs. Margaret, it's yours now. I plan to sell it without ever setting foot on that cursed land." But something inside me, maybe it was grief, maybe it was anger, whispered that I needed to see it just once. I needed to understand why Thomas, my brilliant, loving son, had spent the last decade of his life guarding a secret he wouldn't even share with his own mother. If you're listening to this story right now, I want you to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment telling me where you're from. I want to know how far this story of betrayal and justice will travel, because what I found on that farm didn't just change my life. It shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. The day of Thomas's funeral, I sat in the front pew of St. Catherine's Church, surrounded by faces I barely recognized. The air was thick with the scent of white roses, his favorite. My daughter-in-law, Rebecca, sat beside me, sobbing so loudly her cries echoed off the vaulted ceiling. On her other side sat my granddaughter, 15-year-old Sophie, head down, fingers moving across her phone screen like she was texting her way through the grief. She hadn't cried once. Not a single tear. I wanted to shake her, to scream at her that her father deserved more than her indifference. But I couldn't. I was too numb, too hollowed out by the weight of losing my only child. Rebecca's parents, Victor and Diane Hamilton, stood at the entrance greeting mourners like they were hosting a gala. Victor in his tailored black suit, shaking hands with that politician's smile. Diane in her designer dress, her lips curved in a practiced expression of sympathy that never reached her eyes. I remember thinking, why are they acting like they're in charge? This is my son's funeral, but I said nothing. I just sat there, rigid and silent, feeling like a stranger in my own son's goodbye. 3 days later, the call came. "Mrs. Margaret, this is Charles Garrett. I'm handling your son's estate. We need to meet." His voice had that lawyer tone, measured, careful, hiding something. I drove to his office in the rain, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The office smelled like old leather and expensive cologne. Mr. Garrett slid a thick envelope across his mahogany desk. "Your son left very specific instructions," he said. Inside was a single page. "Will, clean, simple, devastating. I leave full ownership of Willow Ridge Farm to my mother, Margaret Ann Morrison." I stared at those words until they blurred. Willow Ridge. The place Thomas had forbidden me from visiting for over 10 years. The place he'd mentioned only in warnings, never in stories. "Why?" I whispered. Mr. Garrett shook his head. "He didn't say. But he left you this." He handed me the key. It was heavy, old, the kind that belonged to a lock that had seen decades of use. Rust clung to its edges like dried blood. "There's one more thing," Mr. Garrett said quietly. "Mrs. Rebecca was not informed of this bequest, and according to the will, she has no claim to the property." My stomach dropped. "She doesn't know." "Not yet." I drove home in silence, the key burning a hole in my pocket. That night, I sat alone in my living room, staring at family photos on the wall. Thomas as a boy, grinning with missing front teeth. Thomas at college graduation, arm around me so proud. Thomas on his wedding day, smiling at Rebecca like she was the only person in the world. And then I remembered something. Thomas, age 12, gripping my hand on a rainy afternoon. "Mom, promise me you'll never go to Willow Ridge." "Why, sweetheart?" "Because bad things happen there. Just promise." His eyes had been so serious, so afraid. I'd laughed it off as childhood fear. But now, holding this key, I realized Thomas had been trying to protect me. From what? I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Thomas's face, not as he was at the funeral, pale and still in that coffin, but as he was at 12, gripping my hand, begging me never to go to Willow Ridge. The next morning, I made a decision. I had to see it. I didn't tell anyone. Not Sarah, my sister. Not even my neighbor, Patricia, who'd been checking on me every day since the funeral. I just got in my car, punched the address into my GPS, and drove. The route took me out of the city, past strip malls and suburbs, into countryside I'd never explored. The roads narrowed. Trees crowded in on both sides, their branches forming a tunnel overhead. The GPS announced I was 10 minutes away. That's when I noticed the car. A black Range Rover, 3 cars back, but always there. When I slowed, it slowed. When I turned, it turned. My heart started racing. You're being paranoid, I told myself. It's just a coincidence. But when I pulled over at a gas station to test my theory, the Range Rover drove past, slowly, and I saw the driver. A man in sunglasses, his face deliberately turned away. He circled the block and parked across the street. I sat in my car, hands shaking, debating whether to turn back. But something stronger than fear pushed me forward. I needed answers. I got back on the road. The Range Rover followed at a distance, never too close, never too far. When I finally turned onto the dirt road marked Willow Ridge Farm, the vehicle stopped at the main road. It just sat there, watching. The dirt road was narrow, overgrown with weeds that scraped the sides of my car. In the distance, I saw it, a weathered wooden sign, barely visible through the overgrowth. Willow Ridge Farm. The iron gate stood tall and rusted, padlocked with a chain thick enough to anchor a boat. I parked, got out, and approached with the key in my trembling hand. The moment I touched the padlock, a chill ran down my spine. This was it. The place my son had forbidden me from entering. The place that haunted his childhood and, apparently, his adulthood. I turned the key. The lock clicked open with a sound that felt too loud in the silence. I pushed the gate. It groaned like something in pain, and I stepped inside. The property was stunning. That was the first shock. I'd expected decay, abandonment, darkness. Instead, I found rolling green pastures, well-maintained fences, and in the distance, a large white farmhouse that looked freshly painted. Horses grazed in a distant field. I could hear their soft whinnies carried on the wind. This wasn't a cursed place. This was a dream. I drove slowly up the main road, my heart pounding. Near the house, I saw a man, older, maybe 60, working near a barn. He looked up when he heard my car, then froze. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then he walked toward me, his expression unreadable. "You must be Mrs. Margaret," he said quietly. I got out of the car. "Who are you?" "Name's Jacob Foster. I'm the caretaker here. Your son hired me 5 years ago. Thomas?" "Hired you?" He nodded. "Paid me well. Told me to keep this place running no matter what. Told me," he hesitated. "Told me that one day you'd come. And when you did, I was to give you something." He led me to the main house. My legs felt weak as I climbed the porch steps. Jacob unlocked the front door and stepped aside. "He wanted you to see this alone," Jacob said softly. "I'll be outside if you need me." I walked inside. The interior was warm, welcoming. Hardwood floors gleamed in the sunlight. The walls were covered with framed paintings, horses, landscapes, family portraits. In the corner sat a grand piano, its black surface polished to a mirror shine, and on top of the piano was a framed photo, me and Thomas. When he was 8 years old, we were at the beach, his arms wrapped around my neck, both of us laughing. Tears filled my eyes. On the dining table sat a silver laptop, closed, but clearly placed there deliberately. Next to it was a single red rose in a vase, fresh, as if someone had just placed it there this morning. My hands shook as I opened the laptop. The screen came to life immediately. No password, no login, just a video file, cued and ready to play. The thumbnail showed Thomas's face. I pressed play, and my son spoke to me from beyond the grave. "Mom." His voice was calm, gentle, the way he used to talk to me when I was upset. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone. And I'm so sorry." I covered my mouth, tears streaming down my face. "I know you're confused. I know you're angry. But Mom, I need you to listen carefully. What I'm about to tell you will change everything." He leaned closer to the camera, his expression turning serious. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with a genetic heart condition. The doctors gave me 2 to 5 years. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to spend my last years watching me die. My heart shattered. But Mom, there's more. About 6 months ago, I started feeling wrong, sicker than I should have been. My symptoms were getting worse too fast. So I started investigating. I hired private doctors. I had tests done in secret. He held up a folder. And I found something that I never wanted to believe. He opened the folder, showing lab reports. Someone was poisoning me. Mom, slowly, deliberately, I stumbled backward, my hand clutching my chest. Who? I whispered at the screen. Thomas's face darkened. I don't want to say her name yet. Because I need you to see the proof first. Everything is here, in this house. In the room I built underground, the video paused. A new one started automatically. This time, Thomas looked directly at the camera, his eyes red, exhausted. Mom, if you found this place, it means you're in danger too. Victor and Diane Hamilton, they know about Willow Ridge. They know what's buried here. Not just the farm, not just the horses. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. There's oil, Mom. Billions of dollars worth. Right under this land, and they'll do anything to take it from you. The screen went black. I sat frozen, my mind spinning. Oil, poison, betrayal. And then I heard it. Footsteps. On the porch. I spun around just as the front door opened. Standing in the doorway was Sophie, my granddaughter. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. Grandma, she whispered. I followed you. I needed to know what you were hiding. Sophie, you shouldn't be here. I heard Dad's voice, she interrupted, her voice breaking. Is that him? Before I could answer, another sound, a car engine. We both turned to the window. The black Range Rover was parked at the gate, and 3 men in suits were getting out. Get away from the window, I hissed. Pulling Sophie back, my heart was hammering so hard I could barely think. Through the curtains, I watched the 3 men approach the house, slow, deliberate, like predators circling prey. Grandma, who are they? Sophie's voice trembled. I don't know, I whispered. But we need to leave, now. I grabbed her hand and moved toward the back door, but before we reached it, Jacob appeared, blocking our path. His face was grim. Mrs. Margaret, they're from the Hamilton family. I recognized the one in front, Vincent Cole. He's their head of security. Security? I repeated. What do they want? The farm, Jacob said flatly. They've been circling this place for years. Your son kept them at bay, but now that he's gone. A loud knock echoed through the house. Mrs. Morrison. A deep voice called from the front porch. We know you're in there. We just want to talk. Jacob shook his head. Don't open that door. Then what do we do? I asked, panic rising in my chest. Jacob glanced at Sophie, then back at me. There's another way out. Follow me. He led us through the kitchen, past the pantry, to what looked like a coat closet. He pushed aside the hanging jackets and knocked on the back wall, 3 quick taps, then 2 slow ones. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Sophie gasped. What is this? Your father's secret, Jacob said quietly. He called it the war room. Another knock, louder this time. Then the sound of the front door handle rattling. Go, Jacob urged. I'll deal with them, but go! I pulled Sophie into the passage. Jacob closed the wall behind us, and we were plunged into darkness. A single dim bulb flickered to life, illuminating steep wooden steps descending into the earth. Grandma, I'm scared, Sophie whispered. I know, sweetheart. Me too. But we have to keep moving. We descended carefully, the air growing colder with each step. At the bottom, another door, this one reinforced steel. I tried the handle, locked. Then I remembered the key Mr. Garrett had given me, the one that had opened the main gate. I slid it into the lock. It turned smoothly. The door opened with a hiss, like a bank vault unsealing. Inside was a room I never could have imagined. Concrete walls reinforced with steel beams. Maps covered every surface, geological surveys, property boundaries, satellite images of Willow Ridge. In the center stood a long table covered with file folders, hard drives, and 2 computer monitors. Sophie moved to the table, her eyes wide. Dad built this? Apparently, I murmured, still trying to process what I was seeing. I opened the first folder. Inside were contracts, stamped and notarized, land purchase agreements dating back 20 years, and beneath them, Reports from 3 different oil exploration companies, all confirming the same thing. Willow Ridge sat on top of one of the largest untapped oil reserves in the state. Estimated value, $2.3 billion. My hands started shaking. "Oh, Thomas," I whispered. "What did you get yourself into?" Sophie picked up another folder. Her face went pale. "Grandma, you need to see this." She handed it to me. It was a toxicology report, dated 6 months before Thomas's death. Sample, food item, homemade stew. Result, positive for digitalis glycoside, cardiac stimulant. Concentration, lethal for individuals with pre-existing heart conditions. I felt the air leave my lungs. Digitalis, a poison that mimics a heart attack, and the sample had come from a meal prepared at home by Rebecca. "No," I breathed. "No, it can't be." But Sophie was already looking at another document. A series of photos. Rebecca at a restaurant, sitting across from a man I didn't recognize. Then another photo, Rebecca handing an envelope to the same man. A third photo showed the man entering a medical supply store. The photos were time-stamped, all from the last year of Thomas's life. "She was buying the poison," Sophie said, her voice hollow. "My mom. She killed my dad. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to scream that it was impossible, but the evidence was right there, cold, undeniable. Why?" Sophie's voice cracked. "Why would she do this?" I picked up another file. Inside was a photocopy of a contract, dated 3 years ago. An agreement between Rebecca Hamilton and her parents, Victor and Diane. The contract outlined a plan. If Thomas died before transferring ownership of Willow Ridge, the property would default to his spouse under state inheritance law. Rebecca would then voluntarily transfer ownership to her parents in exchange for $10 million and a 5% stake in future oil profits. It was a murder-for-hire scheme. Dressed up in legal language, they planned this, I whispered. All of them. Sophie sank into a chair, her face in her hands. "I don't understand. Mom always seemed to love Dad. She cried so much at the funeral." "She's a good actress," I said bitterly. Above us, I heard muffled voices, footsteps moving through the house. "They're inside," I said. "We don't have much time." I moved to the computer and powered it on. The screen lit up, showing a desktop filled with folders, each labeled with names: Rebecca, Victor, Diane, Vincent Cole. I clicked on the one labeled Final Message. Another video loaded. Thomas appeared on screen, but this time he looked different, thinner, exhausted. His eyes were hollow, but there was a fire in them I'd never seen before. "Mom, if you're watching this, you've found the war room. You know the truth now." He leaned forward. "Rebecca didn't act alone. Her parents orchestrated everything. They've been after this land since I inherited it from Dad. They tried to buy me out. They tried to intimidate me. When I refused, they decided I was more valuable dead." He held up a document. "This is a falsified will, one they plan to present in court. It claims I left everything to Rebecca. It's a forgery, but it's good enough to tie up the real will in litigation for years. By then, they'll have drained the oil and disappeared." Thomas's expression hardened. "But I'm not going to let that happen." He reached off camera and pulled out a thick binder. "Everything you need is in this room. Bank statements showing payments from Victor to the man who sold Rebecca the poison. Recordings of phone calls, emails, witness statements from workers on this farm who saw Rebecca meeting with her father in secret." He looked directly into the camera, his voice breaking. "Mom, I'm sorry I hid this from you. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could protect you. But I was wrong." Tears filled his eyes. "Please, don't let them win. Don't let them take what's yours. What's ours?" The video ended. I sat there, my vision blurred by tears. Sophie gripped my hand. "What do we do, Grandma?" I wiped my eyes, my jaw tightening. "We finish what your father started." Above us, the voices grew louder. Then I heard Jacob's voice, raised and angry. "You have no right to be here. Get out before I call the police." "Stand aside, old man." A crash. Something heavy hitting the floor. "Jacob!" I gasped. Sophie and I ran to the door, but I stopped, my hand on the handle. If we went up there now, unarmed and unprepared, they'd take everything. They'd destroy the evidence. They'd bury the truth. "No." Thomas had left me a war room for a reason. I turned back to the computer, my mind racing. Sophie, can you use a computer? She nodded. Good. Copy everything. Every file, every video, every document. Save it to the hard drives. We need backups. While she worked, I moved through the room, gathering the most damning evidence, the toxicology reports, the photos, the contracts. I stuffed them into a waterproof bag I found in the corner. Then I saw it. On the far wall, behind a filing cabinet, was a second door. Smaller, reinforced. I pulled the cabinet aside and opened the door. Inside was a narrow tunnel sloping upward. At the far end, I could see a sliver of daylight, an escape route. Sophie, we're leaving. But Jacob, we can't help him if we're caught. Come on. She grabbed the hard drives and we plunged into the tunnel. It was narrow, damp, the walls lined with ancient bricks. We crawled on hands and knees, our breath echoing in the confined space. Behind us, I heard a door slam open. Find them. Vincent Cole's voice, cold and commanding. We crawled faster. The exit was a metal grate hidden beneath thick bushes. I kicked it open, and we emerged into the woods behind the farmhouse. I pulled Sophie to her feet, and we ran. Behind us, shouts. The sound of men crashing through the underbrush, but we didn't stop. We reached my car, still parked near the barn. I threw the bag into the back seat, started the engine, and floored it. In the rearview mirror, I saw Vincent Cole and his men sprinting toward their Range Rover. But we had a head start. I drove like I'd never driven before, tearing down the dirt road onto the highway, weaving through traffic. Sophie gripped the door handle, her face white. Where are we going? I glanced at her, my jaw set. To finish this. I didn't stop driving until we were 2 towns over, parked behind a rundown diner where I knew no one would recognize us. My hands were still shaking on the steering wheel. Sophie sat beside me, clutching the bag of evidence like her life depended on it. Grandma, she whispered. What if they find us? They won't, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. Not yet. I pulled out my phone and called Charles Garrett, the lawyer. It rang 4 times before he answered. Mrs. Morrison? Is everything? I need to see you. Right now. It's urgent. There was a pause. Where are you? I'd rather not say over the phone. Can you meet me somewhere public? Somewhere safe? Another pause. Longer this time. There's a cafe on Maple Street. Corner of 5th. I can be there in 30 minutes. I'll be there. I hung up and turned to Sophie. Are you okay? She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. I keep thinking about Mom, about how she... I pulled her into a hug. I know, sweetheart. I know. Do you think she ever loved him? Sophie asked, her voice muffled against my shoulder. Or was it always about the money? I didn't have an answer for that. 30 minutes later, we sat in the back corner of a small cafe, Sophie nursing a hot chocolate while I clutched a lukewarm coffee I couldn't bring myself to drink. Charles Garrett arrived exactly on time, his briefcase in hand, his face lined with concern. Mrs. Morrison, he said, sliding into the booth across from us. What's going on? I didn't waste time. I pulled out the toxicology report and slid it across the table. He read it, his expression darkening with every line. This is... He looked up at me, his eyes wide. This is evidence of murder. I know, I said quietly. And there's more. I showed him the contracts, the photos, the falsified will Thomas had warned me about. Charles Garrett sat back, his face pale. My God, Victor and Diane Hamilton orchestrated this entire thing. They're not going to stop, I said. They came to the farm today. They're looking for this evidence. And they'll do whatever it takes to destroy it. Garrett nodded slowly. Then we need to move fast. We file a criminal complaint. We get this in front of a judge before they can cover their tracks. Will it be enough? Sophie asked quietly. Garrett looked at her, his expression softening. With evidence like this? Yes, I believe it will. But I wasn't so sure. That night, I couldn't sleep. Sophie and I checked into a cheap motel under a fake name, paying cash. I lay in the dark, listening to the hum of the air conditioner, my mind racing. Victor and Diane Hamilton had money, power, connections. What did I have? A bag of evidence and a dead son's voice on a video. Would it be enough? My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I grabbed it, my heart pounding. It was a text from an unknown number. "You can't hide forever, Margaret. Give us what we want, and we'll let you walk away." I stared at the message, my blood running cold. They'd found my number. How? Another text appeared. "We know where Sarah lives. We know where Sophie goes to school. Don't make this harder than it has to be." My hands started shaking. Sarah, my sister. They were threatening my family. Sophie stirred in the bed beside me. "Grandma, what's wrong?" I forced a smile. "Nothing, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." But inside, I was screaming. The next morning, I called Sarah. "Margaret?" Her voice sounded worried. "Where are you?" "I've been trying to reach you for days." "I'm safe," I said. "But I need to ask you something." "Anything. Have you talked to anyone about Thomas's will?" "About Willow Ridge?" There was a pause. "Too long, Sarah. I might have mentioned it to Diane," she admitted. "She called me after the funeral. She was asking about Thomas's estate. I thought she was just being supportive." My stomach dropped. "What did you tell her?" "Just that you'd inherited the farm." "Why? What's going on?" I closed my eyes, feeling the world tilt beneath me. Sarah had told them. Innocently, unknowingly, but she'd told them. "Margaret, talk to me." "You're scaring me." "I have to go," I said. "Wait." I hung up. Sophie looked at me, her eyes wide. "Aunt Sarah told them?" "She didn't know," I said quickly. "She didn't know what they were planning. But the damage was done." 2 days later, Charles Garrett filed the criminal complaint. The evidence was submitted to the district attorney's office. Arrest warrants were issued for Rebecca, Victor, and Diane Hamilton. I thought it was over. I thought we'd won. But I was wrong. The next morning, the news broke. Grieving mother accused of fabricating evidence in bitter inheritance dispute. The article was everywhere. On every news site, every social media platform. It painted me as a delusional, money-hungry woman who was willing to destroy her daughter-in-law's reputation to steal a piece of land. The expert analysis concluded that Thomas's videos could easily have been deep-faked. The toxicology report was inconclusive. The contracts were likely forged. And the worst part? The article was written by a journalist on Victor Hamilton's payroll. I sat in the motel room, staring at the screen, feeling the walls close in around me. "They're destroying us," Sophie whispered. And she was right. Charles Garrett called me that afternoon, his voice tight. "Mrs. Morrison, we have a problem." "I saw the article," I said bitterly. "It's worse than that." The DA is hesitating. "The Hamiltons have hired one of the best defense attorneys in the country. They're threatening a defamation lawsuit if we proceed. So what does that mean?" "It means they're offering a settlement." I went still. "What kind of settlement?" "They'll drop the legal challenges to your ownership of Willow Ridge. You keep the farm. But in exchange, you agree to drop all criminal charges and sign an NDA. You can never speak publicly about Thomas's death again." "That's insane," I said. "They murdered my son." "I know," Garrett said quietly. "But without a trial, we can't prove it. And with their media machine turning public opinion against us." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I hung up and sat on the edge of the bed. My head in my hands. They were going to get away with it. All of it. Sophie knelt beside me. "Grandma, what are we going to do?" I looked at her. This brave, broken girl who'd lost her father and discovered her mother was a monster, and I made a decision. "We're going to fight," I said. "But not the way they expect." That night I made a phone call I never thought I'd make. "Jacob?" "It's Margaret Morrison." There was a pause. Then his gruff voice came through, cautious. "Mrs. Morrison, you all right?" "No," I said honestly. "But I need your help." "What do you need?" "Everything Thomas left. Every piece of evidence. Every recording. I need to know where he kept the originals. The originals are in the war room. But Mrs. Morrison, the Hamiltons have been watching the farm. They've got people stationed there 24/7. You can't just walk in." "I'm not planning to walk in," I said. "I need you to get them out." Silence. Then, "That's dangerous." "I know." Another pause. "When?" "Tonight. Jacob Foster was a man of few words, but he was loyal. That was something Thomas had known when he hired him. And it was something I was counting on now. At 2 a.m., Jacob called me. "It's done. I got what you need. But we've got a problem. What kind of problem? They followed me. I lost them, but they know I was in the war room. They're going to tear that place apart. Then we don't have much time, I said. Where are you? Old storage unit off Route 9, Unit 47. I'll leave the key under the front left tire of the blue pickup parked outside. Thank you, Jacob. Don't thank me yet, he said. Just be careful. He hung up. I turned to Sophie, who was sitting cross-legged on the motel bed, wide awake despite the late hour. Grandma, I want to come with you. Absolutely not, please. I need to do this. For Dad. I looked into her eyes and saw Thomas staring back at me. That same stubborn determination, that same fire. Fine, I said. But you stay in the car, understood? She nodded. The storage facility was dark and deserted, the kind of place where people kept things they wanted to forget. I parked near the blue pickup, found the key, and opened Unit 47. Inside were boxes, dozens of them, all carefully labeled in Thomas's handwriting, evidence, recordings, financial records, witness statements, everything. I started loading them into my car, my heart racing. Sophie helped, working silently, her face set in grim determination. We were almost finished when I heard it, the low rumble of an engine. Headlights swept across the storage units. Get in the car, I hissed. Sophie obeyed, and I slammed the trunk shut, jumping into the driver's seat. The black Range Rover pulled in front of us. Blocking our exit, Vincent Cole stepped out. Flanked by two other men. Mrs. Morrison, he called. We need to talk. I locked the doors, my hands gripping the wheel. Grandma, what do we do? Sophie whispered. I looked in the rearview mirror. There was a narrow gap between two storage units, barely wide enough for my car. Hold on, I said. I threw the car into reverse and floored it. We shot backward. Metal scraping metal as we squeezed through the gap. The side mirrors ripped off, sparks flying, but we made it through. I slammed the car into drive and tore out of the storage facility. Vincent Cole's furious shouts echoing behind us. We drove for hours, taking back roads, doubling back, making sure we weren't followed. Finally, at dawn, we arrived at a small law office in a neighboring county, one Charles Garrett had recommended as a backup. The attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Linda Reyes, listened to our story with growing disbelief. This is bigger than I thought, she said when I finished. Much bigger. Can you help us? I asked. She nodded. I can. But we need to move fast, and we need to go public before they can spin this. What do you mean? Linda leaned forward. We leak the evidence. Not to the mainstream media. They're already compromised. We go to independent journalists. We go online. We make it impossible for them to bury this. I hesitated. That could put us in more danger. You're already in danger, Linda said bluntly. The question is, do you want to fight back, or do you want to spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder? She was right. I looked at Sophie. She nodded. Let's do it, I said. Within 24 hours, the evidence was everywhere. News blogs, YouTube channels, social media. Independent journalists picked up the story, dissecting every document, every recording, every piece of evidence Thomas had left behind. The toxicology reports went viral. The photos of Rebecca meeting with the poison supplier were shared thousands of times. Thomas's videos, his calm, heartbreaking confession, were viewed by millions, and the public was outraged. Justice for Thomas started trending. People who'd never heard of Willow Ridge Farm were demanding answers, demanding arrests, demanding justice. Victor and Diane Hamilton released a statement denying everything. They called it a malicious smear campaign by a disturbed woman. They threatened lawsuits against every platform that shared the evidence. But it was too late. The district attorney, facing mounting public pressure, announced a formal investigation. Rebecca Hamilton was taken into custody for questioning. Victor and Diane hired a team of lawyers and refused to comment further. And I finally allowed myself to breathe. But that breath didn't last long. 3 days after the evidence went public, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Mrs. Morrison? The voice was female, calm, cold. My name is Catherine Vance. I'm calling on behalf of the Hamilton family. I nearly hung up, but something in her tone made me pause. What do you want? I want to offer you a deal. One final offer. I'm not interested. Hear me out, Catherine said smoothly. The evidence you've released is compelling, but it's not as airtight as you think. There are gaps, inconsistencies, things a good defense attorney can exploit. Get to the point. The point, Mrs. Morrison, is that this could drag on for years. Appeals, retrials, media circuses. Your granddaughter will spend her teenage years testifying in court, reliving her father's death over and over. My stomach clenched. Or, Catherine continued, you accept our offer. We'll plead to lesser charges, manslaughter, not murder. Rebecca serves 5 years maximum. Victor and Diane pay a substantial fine and step down from their business ventures. And you? You get Willow Ridge free and clear with no further legal challenges. 5 years? I said, my voice shaking. They murdered my son and you think 5 years is justice? It's more than you'll get if this goes to trial, Catherine said bluntly. Juries are unpredictable. Rich defendants walk free every day. Is that a risk you're willing to take? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her to go to hell. But I thought of Sophie, of the trauma she'd already endured, of the years of testimony, cross-examination, and media scrutiny ahead. I need time to think, I said. You have 24 hours, Catherine replied. After that, the offer expires. She hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone, feeling like I was drowning. Sophie appeared in the doorway. Who was that? Their lawyer, I said quietly. They're offering a plea deal. What kind of deal? I told her. Her face went pale, then red with anger. 5 years? That's it? That's all Dad's life is worth to them? Sophie, no. She shouted, tears streaming down her face. They don't get to buy their way out of this. Dad wouldn't want that. Your father would want you to be okay, I said, my own voice breaking. He'd want you to have a life that isn't consumed by this, but it's not fair. I know, sweetheart. I know. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing, and I held her, wondering what the right answer was, wondering if there even was one. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, the plea deal offer running through my mind on an endless loop. 5 years, was that justice? Or was it just another way for them to win? At 3 a.m., I got up and walked to the window. The street outside was empty, silent. My phone buzzed, another unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Hello? Mrs. Morrison. The voice was male, older, unfamiliar. Please don't hang up. My name is Dr. Henry Whitmore. I was your son's physician. I froze. What do you want? I want to tell you something I should have said a long time ago. I'm listening. There was a long pause. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with guilt. Your son came to see me 7 months before he died. He brought me food samples, asked me to test them. When the results came back positive for digitalis, he asked me to keep it confidential. He said he needed time to gather more evidence. My heart was pounding. Why didn't you go to the police? He begged me not to, Dr. Whitmore said. He said it would put you in danger. He said he had a plan. And I trusted him. I thought he knew what he was doing. Why are you telling me this now? Because I've been watching the news. I've seen what they're trying to do. Discredit the evidence, make you look unstable. And I have something that might help. What? I kept copies of everything. The original lab reports, my notes from our conversations, Thomas's medical records showing the progression of the poisoning. All of it, documented and dated. I could barely breathe. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Fear, he admitted. The Hamiltons are powerful people. I'm just a small-town doctor. I convinced myself it wasn't my place to get involved. But now? Now I've realized that silence makes me complicit. Your son deserves justice, and you deserve the truth. Where are you? I asked. I'm in Milton County, about 2 hours from where you are. I can meet you tomorrow morning. I'll bring everything. How do I know this isn't a trap? You don't, he said honestly. But Mrs. Morrison, I owe this to Thomas and to you. He gave me an address, a small diner on the outskirts of Milton County, and hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, my mind racing. Was this real, or was it another Hamilton ploy? There was only one way to find out. The next morning, Sophie and I drove to Milton County. I'd called Linda Reyes, our attorney, and told her where we were going. "If you don't hear from me by noon, call the police," I'd said. The diner was exactly the kind of place people went to disappear. Old booths, faded linoleum, coffee that tasted like it had been sitting since yesterday. Dr. Whitmore was already there, sitting in a back booth. He was in his late 60s, gray-haired, with tired eyes that had seen too much. "Mrs. Morrison," he said, standing as we approached. "Thank you for coming. You said you have evidence." He nodded and slid a thick manila envelope across the table. Inside were lab reports, dated and stamped, medical records showing Thomas's declining health, and handwritten notes detailing every conversation they'd had about the poisoning. It was exactly what we needed. This is incredible," I whispered. "There's something else," Dr. Whitmore said. He pulled out a small USB drive. "Thomas recorded our last conversation. He wanted it on record, everything he suspected, everything he'd found. He said if anything happened to him, I should make sure you got this." I took the USB drive with trembling hands. "Why didn't he just go to the police himself?" Sophie asked quietly. Dr. Whitmore looked at her with sad eyes. "He didn't think they'd believe him. Not without more evidence, and he was running out of time." We sat in silence for a moment. Then Dr. Whitmore spoke again. "There's one more thing you should know. About Rebecca. What about her? She came to see me 2 weeks after Thomas died. She wanted to know if I'd done any testing on his food, if I had any records that might indicate poisoning." My blood ran cold. "What did you tell her?" I lied. "I said I didn't know what she was talking about." "And she believed you?" "I think so. But Mrs. Morrison, she wasn't acting like a grieving widow. She was cold, calculating. She was covering her tracks." I clenched my fists. "She won't get away with this. With this evidence, she won't," Dr. Whitmore said. "But you need to move fast. I've heard rumors that the Hamiltons are planning to flee the country if things get worse." We drove straight to Linda Reyes's office. She reviewed Dr. Whitmore's evidence with growing excitement. "This changes everything," she said. "With this, we can challenge the plea deal. We can push for a full trial. How long will that take?" I asked. "Months. Maybe a year." I looked at Sophie. She met my gaze, her jaw set. "Do it," she said. "I don't care how long it takes. They need to pay for what they did." Linda nodded. "All right, I'll file the motion today." But as we left her office, something felt wrong. The street was too quiet. The cars parked nearby looked too new, too out of place. "Grandma," Sophie whispered, "are we being followed again?" "Get in the car," I said quietly. "Don't run. Just walk normally." We got in and I started the engine. That's when I saw him, Vincent Cole, standing across the street, phone to his ear, watching us. Our eyes met. He smiled, and I knew. They weren't planning to flee. They were planning to eliminate the problem. Us. I drove like my life depended on it, because it did. "Call Linda," I told Sophie. "Tell her what's happening." Sophie dialed, her hands shaking. "Ms. Reyes? They're following us again. We're heading toward—" "Put her on speaker," I interrupted. Linda's voice came through, tense. "Margaret, listen to me. Don't go home. Don't go anywhere they'd expect. I'm calling the police right now." "They're not going to help," I said bitterly. "The Hamiltons have reach. You know that. Then where are you going?" "Willow Ridge," I said. "What?" "That's the first place they'll look." "I know. But it's also the one place where I have the advantage." I hung up before she could argue. Sophie looked at me. "What are you planning, Grandma?" "Your father didn't just build a war room," I said. "He built a fortress, and it's time we used it." We reached Willow Ridge just before sunset. The farm looked peaceful, horses grazing, the farmhouse glowing warm in the fading light. But I knew better. Jacob was waiting for us at the gate. "Mrs. Morrison," he said grimly. "I've been expecting you. You knew they'd come?" "Your boy prepared for this," Jacob said. "Come on. I'll show you." He led us inside the farmhouse, down to the war room. But this time, he didn't stop there. He moved to the far wall and pressed a hidden panel. Another door opened, revealing an armory, rifles, shotguns, a police scanner, security monitors showing every angle of the property. "Thomas built this?" I breathed. He said if they ever came for the farm, they'd come with force. He wanted you to be ready. I looked at the weapons, my stomach churning. "I'm not a soldier, Jacob." You don't have to be, he said. You just have to survive long enough for help to arrive. What help? Jacob smiled grimly. You leaked the evidence, right? The whole world is watching this case. If something happens to you now, the Hamiltons won't be able to cover it up. He was right. So we hold them off, I said slowly. Make enough noise that someone pays attention. Exactly. Sophie stepped forward. I'll help. No, Grandma, I'm not a child. I can handle this. I looked into her eyes, so much like Thomas's, and realized she was right. She wasn't a child anymore. This nightmare had stolen that from her. All right, I said. But you stay down here. You monitor the cameras and warn us if anyone approaches. She nodded. Jacob handed me a shotgun. You know how to use this? My father taught me to hunt, I said. Long time ago. Good, because they'll be here soon. They came at midnight, 4 vehicles. 8 men. Vincent Cole led them, moving with military precision. Sophie's voice crackled over the radio Jacob had given me. Grandma, they're at the gate. 4 men heading to the main house. The others are spreading out. Copy that, I said, my heart hammering. Jacob was positioned in the barn, covering the east side. I was in the farmhouse watching the front entrance. The first man tried the door. When it didn't open, he stepped back and kicked it. The door held, reinforced steel behind the wood facade. I saw him gesture to another man, who pulled out a crowbar. I raised the shotgun, my hand surprisingly steady. Federal property. I shouted through the door. This is an active crime scene under investigation. You're trespassing! Vincent Cole's voice responded. Mrs. Morrison, don't make this difficult. We just want to talk. Then talk to my lawyer. Open the door. Go to hell. A pause, then gunfire. They shot out the window's glass exploding inward. I dropped to the floor, covering my head, Sophie's voice on the radio. Grandma! Are you okay? I'm fine. Stay down there. More gunfire. They were trying to force entry, but Thomas had built well. The windows had steel shutters that slammed down automatically when the glass broke. The doors held. Jacob's voice crackled over the radio. Mrs. Morrison, I'm calling the police. They're 20 minutes out. 20 minutes? I repeated. We'll never last that long. Yes, you will. Trust me, the siege continued. They tried the back door, the side entrance, even attempted to climb onto the roof. But Thomas had thought of everything. Every entrance was reinforced. Every weak point was covered. The farmhouse was a bunker. Mrs. Morrison, Vincent Cole shouted. You're only making this worse. Give us the evidence and we'll leave. The evidence is already out there, I shouted back. The whole world knows what you did. Then what do you have to lose? My life. Silence, then I heard it. A new sound. Sirens, distant, but growing closer. Sophie, I said into the radio. Do you hear that? Police? She asked hopefully. Maybe. Or maybe they called reinforcements. But then I saw the flashing lights coming up the road, not just one car. 12 state police, county sheriffs, even news vans. Vincent Cole and his men saw them too. They hesitated, looking at each other. Stand down! A voice boomed over a loudspeaker. This is the state police. Drop your weapons and put your hands in the air. For a moment I thought Vincent might try to fight, but then he lowered his gun. His men followed suit. Within minutes, they were all in handcuffs, being loaded into police vehicles. I stepped out onto the porch, shotgun still in hand. My whole body shaking, a state trooper approached me carefully. Mrs. Morrison? Are you all right? I'm fine, I managed to say. My granddaughter is inside. She's safe. We got a call from your attorney. And about 50 calls from people who saw your location on social media. Apparently someone was live streaming this from a security camera. I blinked. What? The trooper gestured to one of the news vans. The whole thing went viral, ma'am. Millions of people were watching. When those men opened fire, the internet went crazy. We had no choice but to respond. I looked at Jacob, who was emerging from the barn with a slight smile. You live-streamed it? I asked. Your son set up the system, Jacob said. I just activated it. Figured if we were going down, the world should see why. I started laughing. Exhausted, relieved, slightly hysterical laughter. Thomas had thought of everything, even from beyond the grave. He was protecting us. The next 3 months were a blur. Rebecca Hamilton was formally charged with first-degree murder. Victor and Diane Hamilton were charged as accessories, and conspiracy to commit murder. Vincent Cole and his men faced charges of attempted murder, trespassing, and assault. The evidence was overwhelming. Dr. Whitmore's testimony, the toxicology reports, Thomas's videos, the financial records showing payments from Victor to the man who supplied the poison, and, most damning of all, the live stream footage of Vincent Cole and his men attacking Willow Ridge. There was no way they could spin this. The trial was held in the county courthouse, packed with media and spectators. I sat in the front row, Sophie beside me, holding my hand. Rebecca was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed. She looked smaller than I remembered, older, broken. Our eyes met for just a moment. She looked away first. The prosecution was methodical, brutal in their presentation of facts. They showed the jury Thomas's final videos, played his voice as he described the poisoning, his suspicions, his heartbreak at realizing the woman he loved was killing him. Sophie cried silently beside me. The defense tried to argue that Rebecca had been coerced by her parents, that she was a victim too, but the jury didn't buy it. The financial records showed she'd been complicit from the beginning. The photos showed her purchasing the poison herself. She wasn't a victim, she was a murderer. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for only 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Rebecca showed no emotion when the verdict was read. She just stared straight ahead, her face blank. Victor and Diane were convicted shortly after. Both received 15 years. Vincent Cole got 20 for the attack on Willow Ridge, and Rebecca was sentenced to life without parole. The day after the sentencing, Sophie and I returned to Willow Ridge. The farm was quiet, peaceful. Jacob was there, tending to the horses. "It's over," I told him. He nodded. "Your boy can rest now." I walked through the farmhouse, touching the things Thomas had left behind. The piano, the books, the photos. Sophie found me in the library, tears streaming down my face. "I wish he was here," I whispered. "I wish I could tell him we won." "He knows," Sophie said quietly. "I think he always knew we would. But there was still one mystery, the text message I'd received the night after the preliminary trial. Mom, I am still alive. I dismissed it as a cruel prank, a hallucination brought on by grief and stress. But now, standing in Thomas's library, I found something, a letter, hidden inside his favorite book, To Kill a Mockingbird. The envelope was addressed to me in his handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened it. "Dear Mom, if you're reading this, it means my plan worked. It means you fought for the truth and you won. I'm so proud of you. I need to confess something. The text message you received, the one that said I was alive, wasn't a prank. I set it up to be sent automatically if certain conditions were met. I wanted you to have hope. I wanted you to keep fighting, because Mom, in a way, I am still alive. I'm alive in Sophie, in the farm I built, in the justice you secured. I'm alive in every moment you refused to give up. I know this journey has been painful. I know you've lost so much. But please know that every sacrifice, every tear, every moment of fear, it was worth it. You saved Sophie from a life of lies. You exposed the truth. You protected my legacy. And Mom, you gave me the greatest gift a son could ask for. You never stopped loving me, even when I made mistakes, even when I kept secrets. You never gave up. Thank you. I love you more than words can say. Forever your son." Thomas, I sank into the chair, the letter clutched to my chest. Sobbing, Sophie wrapped her arms around me. "He's proud of you, Grandma," she whispered. "And so am I." 6 months later, Willow Ridge Farm was fully operational. We kept the horses, started a small agricultural business, used part of the land for community programs, and yes, we extracted the oil, but carefully, responsibly. The profits went into a foundation in Thomas's name, supporting victims of domestic violence and providing legal aid to families fighting inheritance fraud. Sophie thrived. She returned to school, made new friends, started seeing a therapist to process the trauma. She smiled again, really smiled. Sarah, my sister, confessed her role in leaking information to the Hamiltons. She claimed she'd been manipulated, that she didn't know what they were planning. I forgave her, eventually, because holding on to anger would only poison me the way Rebecca had poisoned Thomas, and I refused to let them take anything else from me. 1 year after the trial, on the anniversary of Thomas's death, Sophie and I held a memorial service at Willow Ridge. Friends, supporters, even some of the journalists who'd helped expose the truth, they all came. Dr. Whitmore was there. Jacob, of course. Linda Reyes, our attorney, who'd become a dear friend. We planted a tree in Thomas's honor, a willow, naturally, in the center of the property. As I stood there, watching the branches sway in the breeze, I thought about everything we'd been through, the betrayal, the fear, the violence, but also the strength, the resilience, the justice. Grandma? Sophie stood beside me, holding a small envelope. I wrote something. For Dad. Do you want to hear it? Of course. She unfolded a piece of paper, her hand steady. Dear Dad, I used to be angry at you for keeping secrets. For not telling me you were sick, for leaving. But now I understand. You weren't keeping secrets to hurt us. You were protecting us. Everything you did, the farm, the evidence, the plans, it was all to make sure we'd be okay when you were gone. And Dad? We are okay. Grandma and I fought for you. We made sure the world knew the truth. We made sure your legacy wasn't just about how you died, but about how you lived with courage, with love, with purpose. I'm going to make you proud. Dad, I'm going to live the life you wanted for me, free from lies, full of truth. I miss you every day, but I'm not angry anymore. I'm grateful. Grateful for the time we had. Grateful for the lessons you taught me. Grateful that you loved me enough to fight for my future, even when you knew you wouldn't be part of it. Thank you. Dad, for everything. Love, Sophie. By the time she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the gathering. I pulled her into a hug, holding her close. He would be so proud of you, I whispered. I know, she said, because I'm proud of me too. The months that followed brought unexpected changes. The story of Thomas's murder and our fight for justice became a documentary. Then a book. The attention was overwhelming at times, but it also brought opportunities. Sophie was invited to speak at schools about standing up to corruption, about fighting for truth even when it seems impossible. She was a natural, poised, articulate, brave. I watched her on stage one day, addressing a crowd of teenagers, and I saw Thomas in every gesture, every word. He lived on through her. The Thomas Morrison Foundation grew beyond our wildest expectations. We provided legal assistance to over 200 families in the first year alone, families fighting against inheritance fraud, elder abuse, and domestic violence. We made a difference, real, tangible difference, and every time I signed a check, approved a grant, or met with a family we'd helped, I felt Thomas's presence. This was his dream, and we were making it real, but not everything was resolved. Victor and Diane Hamilton, even from prison, tried to appeal their convictions. 3 times, all 3 appeals were denied. Rebecca, on the other hand, became a different person in prison, or at least she claimed to. She wrote letters. To Sophie, to me, apologizing, begging for forgiveness. I never responded, but Sophie did. One day, she came to me with one of Rebecca's letters in her hand. She wants to see me, Sophie said quietly. My stomach dropped. Absolutely not. Grandma, that woman murdered your father. She doesn't deserve to see you. I know, Sophie said, but I need to see her. I need to look her in the eye and tell her that she didn't break us, that we're stronger because we survived her. I wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed at me to protect Sophie from that monster. But I looked at my granddaughter, 17 now, nearly an adult, and realized this wasn't my decision to make. If you're sure, I said slowly. I am. The prison was cold, sterile, designed to strip away humanity. Sophie and I sat across from Rebecca in a small visiting room, separated by thick glass. Rebecca looked older, grayer. The expensive clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by a faded prison uniform and a bare face. Sophie, she whispered, her voice breaking. Thank you for coming. Sophie's expression was unreadable. I didn't come to forgive you. I know. I came to tell you that you failed, Rebecca flinched. You killed my father. You tried to steal his legacy. You destroyed our family. Tears streamed down Rebecca's face. But you didn't destroy me, Sophie continued, her voice steady. Grandma and I fought back. We exposed the truth. We built something beautiful from the ashes you left behind. Sophie, I don't want to hear it, Sophie interrupted. I don't want your apologies or your excuses. I just want you to know that Dad won. Even in death, he won. Because his love was stronger than your greed. Rebecca sobbed silently. Her shoulders shaking, Sophie stood up. Goodbye, Mom. I hope someday you find a way to live with what you've done. We walked out of that prison together. And I saw something in Sophie's face I hadn't seen in a long time. Peace. 5 years have passed since that day. Sophie is 22 now, studying law at Stanford. She wants to be a prosecutor, specializing in financial crimes and inheritance fraud. Thomas would be so proud. Willow Ridge Farm is thriving. We've expanded the foundation, opened satellite offices in 3 states, and helped over 1,000 families. Jacob still runs the day-to-day operations, though he talks about retiring soon. I'm getting too old for this, he jokes. But I know he'll never really leave. This place is as much his as it is ours. Sarah and I have rebuilt our relationship, though it's different now. The trust is fragile, but it's there. Victor and Diane Hamilton are still in prison. They'll be eligible for parole in another 8 years. I've already written letters to the parole board, detailing their crimes, their lack of remorse, their continued attempts to manipulate the system. They will not get out early if I have anything to say about it. Rebecca died 2 years ago. Heart attack, the prison said. Ironic, considering what she did to Thomas. Sophie didn't attend the funeral. Neither did I, today. I'm sitting in Thomas's library at Willow Ridge, the same place where I found his letter all those years ago. The room is exactly as he left it. His books, his piano, his photos. I come here when I need to feel close to him. I've been thinking a lot about this story, about what it means, about why I'm sharing it with you, because here's the truth. What happened to my family could happen to anyone. Betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the people you trust most, the people you love, and when it does, you have a choice. You can let it destroy you. Or you can fight back. You can demand justice. You can expose the truth. You can refuse to be silenced. It won't be easy. There will be days when you want to give up. Days when the fear is overwhelming. Days when it seems like the powerful will always win. But they won't. Not if you keep fighting. Not if you refuse to surrender. So if you're listening to this story, and you're facing your own battle, whether it's against a corrupt family member, an abusive partner, a fraudulent business, or any system designed to keep you powerless, I want you to know this. You are stronger than you think. You are braver than you know, and you are not alone. There are people who will stand with you. Lawyers like Linda Reyes and Charles Garrett, allies like Jacob and Dr. Whitmore, communities who will rally behind you when the truth comes to light. But it starts with you. It starts with the decision to not give up, to not let them win, to fight for what's right, no matter the cost. My son, Thomas, spent the last years of his life building a legacy of truth. He knew he was dying. He knew he was being poisoned. And he could have spent that time in despair, but he didn't. He spent it building evidence, planning, preparing, making sure that even in death, he could protect the people he loved. That's courage. That's love. And that's the lesson I want to leave you with. No matter how dark things get, no matter how powerful your enemies seem, never underestimate the power of preparation, truth, and relentless determination. Sophie called me yesterday from California. Grandma, I got an internship with the DA's office. I'll be working on inheritance fraud cases. I couldn't stop smiling. Your father would be so proud. I know, she said softly. I feel him with me every day, pushing me forward, reminding me why this matters. He's watching over you. Sweetheart, over both of us. Before I end this story, I want to tell you one more thing. After the trial, after everything was settled, I found one final video on Thomas's laptop. It was short, just 30 seconds. Thomas sitting in the library, the same place I'm sitting now. He looked directly at the camera and said, "Mom, if you're watching this, it means you won. It means you fought for me, for Sophie, for the truth. And I want you to know something. I'm not sad. I'm not angry. I'm at peace. Because I know that my life had meaning. That my death wasn't in vain. That the people I love are safe. Thank you for being my mother. Thank you for never giving up. I love you always." And then the video ended. I visit Thomas's grave every month. It's in a small cemetery near Willow Ridge, under a willow tree we planted. The headstone reads, "Thomas James Morrison, beloved son, father, fighter. His truth lives on, and it does." In Sophie's work. In the foundation, in every family we help, his truth, our truth, lives on. So I'll ask you again, the question I asked at the beginning of this story. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have accepted the settlement, taken the money and walked away? Or would you have fought? I'd love to know your answer. Leave it in the comments below. Tell me where you're listening from. Tell me if this story touched you, angered you, inspired you. Because every story shared is a light in the darkness. Every voice raised is a blow against injustice. And together, we can make sure that people like Rebecca, Victor, and Diane Hamilton never win again. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Thank you for listening to my son's story. Thank you for believing that truth matters. God bless you all, and remember, courage will always lead us to better days. The story you've just heard has been adapted to protect identities. Names, locations, and certain details have been changed. But the core truth remains. Families can harbor darkness. Greed can corrupt. And justice, though difficult, is always worth fighting for. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share. On the screen, you'll find 2 more stories from our channel that I think you'll find equally powerful. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never stop fighting for what's right.